Good
Morning.
I'm just getting started because there's another meeting, so that's running over. So anyhow, again, thanks for coming to the Scrum Master Community Practice events. We're going to be talking about no story point risk-based planning. And I kind of broke this up in two parts. First part being like how and why no story point risk-based planning like came about, like what were the reasons behind and how did it kind of evolve. And then the second part is going to be basically straightforward. How do I walk a team through this? And you guys are going to be the team. I'm going to have you guys do the exercise to know kind of what it feels like. But really, I want this as informal as possible. So I want you to ask questions, interrupt, raise your hand. We'll address those questions as we go. And I say we'll address because I actually invited people from my teams here. I have a PO and a few dev members to kind of speak from their experience as well. And you guys can ask them any questions. But the first thing I wanted to do is kind of go around and have each of us really quick introduce ourselves. This would be like really 15 to 30 seconds. Introduce yourself, your role in or working with Agile teams, and then what you hope to get out of kind of today's topic. So I'll go first. I'm Kevin Rush. I'm a Scrum Master. I work with 3 teams currently. And basically, I'm hoping to get more insight of what your guys' pain points and how this maybe could evolve more and help in sprint planning for you guys. So you go next.
I'm Chelsea. I am a Scrum Master as well. I actually started this with one of my teams based on shadowing you doing this. But I am interested in kind of hearing the step back version, right? When I was watching you, it was in a shadowing capacity. So I'm interested in hearing like the philosophical reasons behind it and figuring out how I can make it more effective for my teams.
My name is Jim. I am Scrum Master with 2 teams. One of my teams is already doing no point story planning, but I'm here because I'm looking for like a different perspective, how somebody else is using it, maybe a different conversation piece of it.
Cool. Tyler Kahn. I'm actually the product owner that Kevin pulled in. Two of my 3 teams currently use this no point system, so I'm here just to kind of answer any questions you guys have about our process and let you know how it goes.
I'm Raquel. I'm a QA analyst, but trying to be a part-time and one day full-time Scrum Master. Hoping to get out of today. We're kind of already starting to do no points, but hearing a different perspective and seeing how you implement that to learn ways maybe our team could be doing stuff better.
Perfect.
My name is Steven Spadafora. I'm a tech lead on the configuration services team. We've went through many types of planning over the years. We're currently doing the no point planning type, so just here to give perspective.
I invited him here and also to give deep free donuts. So I bribed both these guys with free donuts.
This is me. I'm Forrest Dorsey. I'm a test engineer in the content services program. Kevin is my Scrum Master for one of my teams that I'm on. So I'm pretty intimately familiar with the whole no point system and a lot of the stuff he's going to talk about today. So I'm hoping I can kind of expand on how it's worked out for our teams and give that kind of perspective from someone that's been doing it for quite a while now.
Polly, would you basically just a quick thing?
I'm a Scrum Master working while I work on Kevin's team, and I just want to learn new techniques. Hopefully they're helpful.
Cool.
Brendan Sandham. I work with a number of teams in integrations and capture as a Scrum Master. And I just started introducing this concept to one of my teams. I would like to get a better sense as to how it might be relevant to some of my others as well.
Cool. Jennifer or anybody online, Linda, anybody share real quick, introduce yourself, the role, and what you hope to get out of today's topic, just so we make sure we're like covering those things.
Sure, I'll go. I'm Jennifer Snato. I'm the Scrum Master out of our Olathe office for the Perceptive Content teams. And we don't do estimation, but we do Kanban. So I would just like to see how you guys do sprint planning without estimation.
Thanks. Perfect.
My name's Linda. Yeah, hi guys. My name's Linda. I'm a Scrum Master. I work mostly in the integrations program, and my teams have already adopted no story points, but something that I feel like they're missing is the idea of understanding the risk associated with it, each story that they're bringing into the sprint, and I thought Kevin's method might help with that. So I'm here to learn.
Thanks. Perfect. Anybody else on Mari or anybody else online?
Hi, my name is Latanya. I am a Scrum Master and R&D Manager for one of the teams that Jim is the Scrum Master for. And for me, I'm just interested in understanding this concept.
Awesome. So glad you joined us. So I'm going to kind of jump in again. I mentioned right before, right when I kicked this off, we're going to do two parts. One, kind of like how this came about, the iterations of it, and the philosophies kind of behind it. And then we're going to go more into like the how, like what do we actually do? And you guys will walk you through the exercise together. So this kind of came about, and I want this again to be very informal. Please raise your hand anytime you have questions, and we'll try to clarify things as we go. This really did come about as like a team effort. Like I started to poke around with it, did it with the system team, and did it with another team I was supporting at the time, and it started to evolve. Really, all these guys at the table have their fingerprints on this, and they'll be able to share different things along the way of how the kind of came to be. But the Scrum Guide basically says sprint planning should be two things. It really should answer these two questions. This is directly from the Scrum Guide. So this isn't like Kevin's verbiage. This is literally their verbiage. So what can be delivered in the increment resulting from the upcoming sprint? And then how will the work needed to deliver the increment be archived? When I first started as Scrum Master, I was pretty good at retros. Like it was kind of natural for me to be able to deal with people and kind of work things out, flesh it out in the team. One thing that was often I felt like was lacking was sprint planning. I'd come into sprint planning and I wasn't always sure if we were answering these two questions. Like often we would get in the weeds kind of talking about what does a story point mean and get back and forth and not really kind of get to the work. The PO would often be like frustrated because the team was wanting more UAC coming in and often I just felt like it was like a dud. Like I'm just being honest, like sprint planning for me as I was trying to figure this out felt like a dud. And one of the biggest kind of points of contention was probably story points that would sidetrack the whole conversation. Not because I think it's a bad method of doing it, just often teams can't, they don't really come to a place of like even grounding of what that means. I mean, honestly, real quick, what do story points communicate, or what is a story point? If you guys had to say, just throw out real quick things, spitball, ping pong.
Complexity of the story.
Complexity.
Size of it.
Size. How large or small.
Mm-hmm.
Uncertainty of what you're doing.
Uncertainty.
Yeah,
Assumptions.
It's a kind of arbitrary. Can shift team to team.
Right. Anybody like time?
Time and effort it'll take to.
Time and effort, right? So you have all these things that it can be. It can be size, it can be effort, it can be time to complete, right? Like days, if you're in TFS, you're like literally trained to think this way. Risk, complexity. And so this became like one of my huge like complaints about working with teams. I'd actually I can't get them to kind of get past arguing about what a point is, because I think their logical brain turned on, and then it becomes they're kind of engineer and math people by definition, so it should have an exact thing. So not only do you have all these things going on, then you throw a relative scale on top of it, and then it's like, oh, which one am I talking about, and from which way is up? So when the Agile coaches kind of came to us and said like, hey, you could move away from story point and start using stuff like throughput and Monte Carlo and base kind of future predictions based on previous behavior, I jumped all over it. I was like, yes, let's do this. I'm tired of having this same conversation over and over again. Amy, who's somebody who I've showed this method to, she started doing it at the time. This is a slide that she created to like show her people. Story points can be misleading. One person can be thinking about complexity and when sizing, another one's thinking about days, and the conversation becomes skewed and it leads to talking about numbers instead of the actual work itself. I thought that was perfectly concise of how I always felt. But as I said, okay, I'm going to jump on and make this shift, I started asking myself, but what am I potentially going to lose? What am I going to lose with the team as we do these exercises? The first thing that kind of came to mind was engaging the whole team for instant feedback, right? You get that quick instant feedback loop. Minimizing poisoning the pot effect, right? Is it effect or effect? I don't know. Someone help me on my thesaurus, understanding English language. But bottom line is I wanted to minimize the poisoning the pod effect. You know, the tech lead says something, so everybody backs down. It's whatever the tech lead says. So to give them an opportunity, whatever was in their head, to kind of put it out there and have a discussion about it as quick as possible. The next one is appropriate discussions around breaking down the work, right? Especially if you're doing on previous behavior, predicting future results, you have to have the same kind of behavior or better the behavior. And not breaking down the work is one of the things that will clog the pipe, the flow, more than anything. So I thought that was really important. Another, a common team language or framework, right? So they kind of know at a gut level what those mean. That's kind of the idea of story points. You should have a gut level of like, oh, we know what a 5 feels like. We know what an 8 feels like. We know what a 13 needs to be broken down. Like you have a framework and a language. And the last one is the gamification feel that Planet programs, 3, 2, 1, shoot. Like that's kind of fun. It's kind of easy to keep people engaged and to keep them, again, giving that instant feedback. So these are things I decided I didn't want to lose. So I started to think about how do I can address this. And one of the first things that I came across was this video from Jim Benson. He wrote Personal Kanban and Wide Limit Whip. And this is a YouTube video. It's kind of a rant, but he was talking about the same issues that I was having with story points. And then he said, here at Spotify, we tried to use like a metaphor of kitten, zombie, crocodile, and crocodile, zombie. And they were just using these metaphors to kind of rank the stories or to get discussion started around the stories. And so I started thinking about, oh, okay, I'm going to try that. So at the first kind of, I was shown this on Friday, the idea of this. And on Tuesday, I presented it to the team I was working with, and they said, yeah, we want to get rid of story points. And so I called up the Agile coach and said, hey, I'm going to do this. You want to come down and like do this? Is it okay? I'm going to go. He's like, yeah, let's do it. So he came down, I just threw this up on the board. This is what I came up with. So first we discussed the calendar, right? Anything coming up this sprint that could go, vacations, stuff like that. Then I discussed the Monte Carlo. I pulled it up and said, hey, this is Monte Carlo. The Monte Carlo basically, and if you haven't seen it, I'll demonstrate it a little bit later. But the Monte Carlo is basically a simulator of taking your previous behavior, and it runs simulations or an algorithm and says how many items percentage-wise it's likely to get done. So you're 95% likely to get 6 items done. You're 6 or 85% likely to get 13 items done or whatever. And so it creates this bell curve by running simulations, and then they can bet on themselves. That's why I always say, like, look, this is risk-based planning. You got to decide how much risk you feel comfortable. This is what like Las Vegas would bet on you, but what do you guys want to bet on you? So I showed them the Monte Carlo and gave them that, and then we discussed each backlog item and kind of talked about, is it a kitten or is it a crocodile? And the idea was this is something that's small enough that we're not scared of it. It's a kitten, it's cute, cuddly, or is it a crocodile? It's something that could eat us alive. And so that became like kind of the first metaphor I used. And so after the Monte Carlo, we started with 7. We said, okay, based on our Monte Carlo and our throughput, we want to start with 7. As you can see, it went up, up, and up. And the reason it went up and up and up is we started talking about each story. We saw different things. Like there was a lot of just smoke test stories. Like these are basically smoke tests, like things we got to do for other things. So if we're taking them on as tasks, we feel more comfortable taking that risk on. Does that make sense? So actually they got to see the risk that I wrote up in front of them on the board, and they begin to make adjustments as those came along. Does that make sense? So that was kind of the first iteration. And it was fine, but it was lacking some like continuity. So at that time, my daughter was really into Exploding Kittens, and I was actually some coworkers here said, hey, let's do a game day on Friday, and they started playing the game with me. Who's familiar with Exploding Kittens? Everybody? So yeah, so I brought them. Bottom line is, it's a real simple game. The idea of the game is if you pull an exploding kitten, you explode and you're out. Unless you have a diffuse card, that's pretty much the game. Like that's literally, there's other cards in there that you can play and try to make it harder on, have strategy to make it harder on who you're playing against. But that's kind of it. You have these kind of cards that will come up and you can diffuse them. So I decided to say, like, okay, what if I took that metaphor and started to use it more with my teams? And so we came up with this kind of ranking or rating system. the kitten is a story you feel there's little to no risk that'll flow right through our system. It has no dependencies. It really should be easy to complete, right? We've seen this before. We're not scared. We should knock this out pretty quick. Exploding Kitten, though, is a story that you feel should be easy to get done, but there's a potential risk or dependency to complete it. There's something in their gut that says, I don't feel right about that, or this is new ground. Even though it seems pretty straightforward, we did some research, it's just really new ground, or there's an infrastructure risk, or there's this. Can we actually talk about that and begin to kind of come up with a plan or some quick steps of who or what we're going to do to address that. And then Fat Cat. This is one, literally at the beginning it was a man-eating serpent was actually the second iteration. And the idea was you can't take it's an old mythology and metaphor. I think it might be Beowulf, but you can't take a man-eating like serpent head on. Like you have to come at its side and cut it up, like cut it up in small pieces so you can take it. So that was the idea. If we go out and just try to like, oh, we'll get that one done. No, let's cut it up and break it down. But Jordan actually on the system team, right, for us, so like he just drew up Fat Cat one. I don't know why. I think he just thought like it's a big story and it's a fat cat. So, and it really works. Like it stays in the feeling family, and it made this a lot more fun. So we talked about, and we love our tuxedo cat, right? That's what we call our big fat cat. He's our tuxedo cat. But this is a story that you feel is too large to fit in a sprint and needs to be converted into multiple kittens, right? Have kittens, or go on a scope diet. So we talk about with the PO, say, hey, could that wait later? Can we just cut that out right now? And, or does that even really need to be in there? Like, is that kind of gold plating and maybe needs to kind of go? So that became like the rating system in the game. And that's how I took them basically through the same kind of exercises, but from these conversations, we would have discussions about how to diffuse them. So Exploding Kitten, who or what could diffuse the situation? You know, that's like a simple question, who or what? So maybe we don't know, we literally don't know, we've never did this before, but we know this person has expertise. We'll write that diffuser up on the board and add it to like the JIRA card, like, hey, see, this person is stuck. Again, trying to get ahead of the risk. If you identify the risk, you're more likely to, one, you're not wasting time then going around saying, hey, who would I need to talk to? And that, and two, you're addressing kind of the pain points ahead of time. You might even look into it ahead of time. It's just in front of you. So we find that beneficial. So that's the general kind of evolution. And you can see that through all those things, we still addressed all those points. I would go 3, 2, 1, shoot. So we still had gamification. We still had the opportunity for them to get it out of their brain real quick, give their feedback, to not think about it. Risk, fear by definition is not something, as soon as you start to go through your logical brain and reasoning, you reason away risk. But the whole thing is you want to get it out there because, hey, I have this, let's talk about it and get that out. So what questions do you have? That's the first thing. Any questions from what I've presented so far that you have? Questions about anything online? Feel free to speak up. So from team members and people who've been a part of this exercise, what have you guys noticed, like from what I said, or what popped out in the kind of evolution? What brought value to you as you started to do this?
Yeah, well, when we first started this, I was a little skeptical, to be honest.
Yeah.
It just seemed weird because, like, even in the Scrum classes before, I was taught, the point-based. But the one interesting thing that I found with this method, the no points, is this sort of fixes the issue with skill level per person on the team. You're more focused on breaking cards down into kittens or finding these risk things. It's not so much like before. I noticed, like, we would vote and certain members of the team might put a 1 and then completely opposite direction a 5, but it was based on their skill level, thinking like, how would I get this done? And I think this more kind of just keeps us all honed in and focus on, well, let's break this down into the smallest logical chunk, and it doesn't really matter who grabs the card then. So it seemed like we became more cross-functional because of this method, if that makes any sense.
I think so.
And then, what was I going to say? I also think it drives better conversation. So my team, we actually have 2 separate teams, a front end and a back end team. And so before, like, another member of my team, like on the back end side, because I work on the front end, would be like, well, I think this card will take 3. And I'm like, yeah, 3, you know it better than me. Like, I'm not working on that area of the code. Where now this setup sort of drives like, well, can you tell me more about it? Oh, well, this might be an exploding kitten. Like, have you considered this? Or, well, hey, can you cut this up? So I think it just drives better overall conversation with this method. And I think we've benefited from that greatly.
Would you say you got more transparency into the front end, back end issues at least?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because they kind of have like a sub team like within their team. I don't love it, but we've made it work, and they collaborate really well, so it hasn't been a problem at all. So yeah,
I just think it encourages better discussion overall.
Yeah. Forrest, what about your experience?
Yeah, so I had a cool introduction to this because Kevin became my Scrum Master. I was initially, still am on the API team on the content services program, and so then I also kind of got like a second team with the system team where I got Kevin as my Scrum Master. So I was doing both at the same time. So I got to experience the point system and the kitten system at the same time and kind of really see the differences between the two. And just from my experience on the API side, and also from talking to other people on different teams and other friends here at Highland stuff are doing the point system and getting into Agile and Scrum and everything, nobody likes the points. Like it just nobody does. Like the problem with them is, like Kevin pointed out, is that it just becomes a arbitrary arguing point where it just everyone gets focused on like why, like the points themselves and not what they represent or not what the stories are or the work we need to get done. It just becomes a discussion of like, I think it's a 1, I think it's a 3, and not anything actually important, right? So it really pulled away from really constructive planning. So then when you switched over to the kitten system, I think like Steven said, it really focuses more into the actual work, because now you're just saying, is it something we can do, something we can't do and got to break up, or is it something that could have problems? And that's all you focus on. That's all you care about, and that's all directly related to the stories and the tasks and everything. So I get definitely streamlined planning a lot. Makes things faster, makes things more focused, and it's a lot more interesting and engaging. I think it's the big thing too, is when you start getting into the points, people kind of don't care. You kind of zone out. You're like, yeah, it's a 3, sure, let's go, move on. Like, you stop caring. With this system, it's more of like, you have to actually stop and think and like give your opinion. Do you think it's a kitten? Do you think it's going to explode? Whatever. And then you have to explain why. Like if you're different. Normally with the point system, it's like, I think it's a 5. I think it's a 1. Usually everyone's like, all right, we'll make it a 3, whatever. And there's no like real discussion that happens. Sometimes there does, but a lot of times people just don't care, so you don't just get through it. With this one, if it's like, oh, you said it's exploding kitten. All right, why? Like you need to say why, because it's potentially a risk. And then it really opens up discussion. And I think it's just overall been a much better and just much more enjoyable experience compared to the point system.
I find with the system team, we were able to like start to talk about delivering as a team better too with this versus like just 3 points. It's just all relative. We'll see how it goes. It actually become like, hey, there's risk and we might not deliver because of the risk, and actually having intelligent, focused conversations around it. Tyler? Any thoughts from a PO's perspective? What it's
the biggest thing that I feel like we've gotten out of it is just the conversation more so around the risk. Why is it an exploding kitten, or why is it a fat cat? A really good example right now is Highland IDP. That's on our board. That was a fat cat, and unfortunately there was nothing we could do to really kind of scope diet that one. It just needs to get done. So we called that specifically out as a risk, and I think we follow up on that pretty regularly and get updates. And I think just seeing the visibility of some of the risks, or why does Steve think that his task could be an exploding kitten? calling out that risk as a group is what I've seen a lot of value in. So,
any quick questions for them from online or in the room? You can ask them more as we go, but we're going to basically kind of move into the exercise part of this. So kind of you'll get to know what it feels like, what it's like. Online people, I've even do this with, we have on system team, we have one guy that's remote. So I do one of two things. Usually I just have them ping me in the Mattermost channel directly. So if you have that, you can more than, I would encourage you just to ping me because it'll pop up on my screen and then I can ask you follow-up questions about the story. So if you have Mattermost, get that open, direct message me. And then in the room, I need you guys everybody ready to Sharpie and sticky notes. And the first thing we do is we draw a kitten, exploding kitten, or fat cat. This is the first thing. When people come into the room, I'll have this slide up or something like this, the tuxedo cat up I talked about. So here's some different interpretations. I kind of have a Hall of Fame that I'm collecting. I take these, they know to leave them for me if they don't want them or don't want to bring them back to use again. That I collect them. So draw your interpretation, kitten, exploding kitten, fat cat. You can even do this online if you want to turn on your video camera. That's totally up to you. And you can hold it up. Sometimes it's hard for me to see, but I get used to it and pretty good at reading the room. It's really cool to see like different interpretations of this. You might notice right here in the middle, Forrest remembers this one. Yeah. So we're doing sprint planning about 3 minutes into it. You know, one team member holds this up, and I said, "What's that?" And he's like, "Oh, exploding kitten." He's like, and he used the scientific term. It's triglyceride. It's dynamite, right? So this is the chemical code for dynamite. And we like literally go, dude, did you have that in your head? It made us super nervous. And we're like, we might need to be calling security or HR right now. And he's like, no, I looked it up on my phone and wrote it up. So it's kind of fun. Again, there's interpretations. And it's been a lot of fun just to kind of even have them draw and just have that. You can literally, if somebody's like, I don't like to draw, I'm not going to draw, just write kitten, exploding kitten, fat cat, or boom. There's all kinds of stuff. You see boom right there.
I'm generally surprised how many people actually draw like stuff for you.
Oh yeah, it's fun.
It's great.
Yeah, I love it. So I kind of collect them. Forrest is one of my best artists. I'm not gonna lie. Probably why you got here. That's why I recruited you.
That's all.
I'm just teasing. So here's basically then the order. This is the process, so you guys know what kind of I do. I review the team's calendar with them. So we'll look at the sprint coming up, and if anything's any big days off for the whole team or individuals or taking sabbaticals. We're only looking for outliers, so we're only looking for big things. Then I'll go through the Monte Carlo simulation. I'll often bring up their throughput graph, how much they're getting done each sprint, so they kind of get an idea of that. And I even use what I call forecast on delivery. So this is kind of the idea of they've been forecasting this, and how have they been at actually delivering on those forecasts? Not anything but those committed stories. So I can keep those things usually in front of them. Then we'll set the initial scope of the sprint, what we think we're going to pull in while stories or issue-wise. And then I write up the predictability of that happening. And then we basically run through each story. I basically hand over, typically if I have a PO, I hand over to the PO at this point. He reviews the roadmap, the PI plan or objectives, the priorities. I'm giving him an opportunity to cast vision to say, hey, this is what we committed to in PI planning, how are we doing? To look at that and actually go, ooh, okay, we're behind, we're ahead, what it might be. And then actually we go through discussing each story. I usually have the PO read the story out in the descriptions, and then we have discussions. We'll practice that here. And then we identify risk dependencies, diffusers, break down large stories. And I journal those all on a board. And the reason I do that is because I want to keep it in front of the team. Even with our remote team members, we'll share the JIRA backlog, right, as we're doing it. But I'll still do this, and at the end, before we do a confidence vote, I'll take a picture and send it to them. So I want them, I'll put it in our channel and let people be able to say, yes, I have a confidence vote of that. And then we do confidence vote, like I was just explaining, and then finalize the sprint goal. So the PO kind of usually sets that general idea for the sprint goal, the team kind of helps clarify. So that's what we're going to do. So now that you have your kitten, exploding kitten, fat cat drawn, ready to go, we'll start with days off. So seriously, you guys are a team, you're developing this product. We have a product owner. This is the next PI, we'll say, the 18th through the 1st. So did you guys have any PTO? Assume that it's the beginning of this kind of sprint. Do you have PTO?
I might take a Monday off.
Monday? Okay. So that's a 1 day. So I wouldn't call that an outlier. That's probably baked into our team. We always, like, somebody takes a day, there's UTO that gets called off. What I'm looking for is outliers. Anybody taking sabbatical?
I will.
Yes.
You insist.
Anybody online? So I just write, that's a negative influence, right? She's out like the whole sprint. She's gone. So another thing I definitely would say is, hey, do we have any team trainings or anything that we're going to be out for a day? Is anybody going to?
Yeah, team training.
We have team training. So
2 days.
Let's say tech leads training out for I'm going to say 3 days. I added another day to your training. So again, negative influencer. And then, by the way, our manager just told us that we're going to have a team outing this Friday. So we're all out that day. So we're going to have one day. I'm also looking for paid holidays. I literally put it on my slide that I show them so they know, hey, remember that this paid holiday is how this will affect that. So we're going to have one team out. So I'm not going to write that up there. And you might say, well, why? Because I'm going to bake it into the Monte Carlo. And that's where I'll go next, meaning I'll only pick 13 days instead of 14 days. Just bake that into the prediction. Since it's the whole team, right? It's losing a whole day for the whole team. So then I would show them, so this is your guys's, just act like this is your guys's. This is your sprint forecast from last sprint. So I want you guys to see your Monte Carlo. I'll take a snapshot of it so we know what swath we took. You know, the previous behavior that we took of throughput and bringing the simulation on, and we got our bell curve. This is saying, you know, 6% or 95% of the time we get 6 done. So this one is the previous one again, 9 times 85%, 12 items at 70%, and so on, right? For those who've never seen it. So we predicted we could do 14. So 14 was right here, and it was around 60%. So that's what it said. So you can see, well, we did all right, guys, but we had 4 escape. I often put our sprint plan up so they can kind of see what's going on, or I put the last notes that I had from our forecast. So they can see, oh yeah, that's right, we did have a lot of risk. We did take that on. So they know kind of what came, how well they're doing basically forecasting, being predictable. And then I'll show them, this is your throughput, your team. And this, by the way, this is like a hodgepodge of different slides from 3 of my teams, so it's not going to be consistent. Don't bring that up. I know that. I didn't want to throw one under the bus or be like, this is the golden child. Because we basically want to get good at comparing against ourselves, not against others. And that's how you get better in life. That's how you improve yourself. Same thing with our teams. So throughput, you know, basically I would point out you guys are anywhere from 11 to 20. You can see the actual numbers down at the bottom. Throughput, average, issues committed and completed. And this escape rate is only on the committed issues. Does that make sense? By all means, raise your hand, speak up. And then this delivery on forecast is basically this chart. So for the last sprint, there was 4 stories that escaped. Does that make sense? So that's why it's -4. And so you can see kind of the line. A perfect one would be riding on the baseline or the top line, the top of the water, never ever going under.
Something real quick to add. Kevin was talking about committed issues. Something he does really well for our teams is go through, and after sprint planning, I'll get a dump of emails from JIRA that Kevin Rush added the committed label to each of our stories that we pulled in. Anything that we pulled in for that sprint said, hey, this is what we're doing, we get tracking on. A lot of the times, especially with having 2 separate sub-teams, the back-end team may not be able to pull some of the front-end cards in. So they'll go to the backlog and pull something in. And we don't, while we get tracking on that, that's not something that we committed to. We only really care about, here's what we committed to, here's what we've done, we finished. So in his previous slide, you saw 10 of 14. In reality, we finished 15 to 16 cards,
Right.
But we only care about those committed issues.
So again, that's why you'll see like your throughput at 20, but only 13 were committed. So we pulled in 7 issues, right? So this gets us, are we missing the mark? Are we not? And then it gets you have good discussions around, are we planning well? This can be brought up in retro and stuff. Are we planning well? Or are we just getting so much side swipes? And we have to start to think about what side swipes might be coming, or how much are we going to bake in, capacity-wise to allocate to those things. So that's a really good point. About the committed label in JIRA, another reason we use that is so I can on the board really quick put a filter on it, say these are the committed ones, guys. How are we doing with the committed ones? Like we want to focus on them first. These second ones are literally secondary because they came in. Unless the PO says no, that one has to be done. It came in and we have to get it done. But it gives the product owner again that ownership of priority with the feedback and collaboration of the team. Like that's the goal. We want to work together. So Monte Carlo simulation, I'm gonna give you a quick demo and tips on how I use it. Again, I'm not the most authority, I'm just somebody who uses it. Anybody have a team that they want me to kind of demo? Your data. Uh-oh, this ain't good. I forgot I'm doing dual screens and I don't want to switch back and forth, so my neck's gonna hurt. No volunteers? Well, here.
You can do Forge Sprint project.
Cool. When I get there, tell me again, okay?
Got it.
Perfect. So tip number 1, if you're a Scrum Master or anybody, bookmark the Actionable Agile link. So you don't have to, you get confused because you think that it's in each team's board. It's really not. It's a separate link that loads it in the shell, in the framework of JIRA. So just bookmark it because it's the same one no matter what. Because what JIRA does is what Actionable Agile does is it takes a copy of all the data in JIRA and moves it over to your computer locally. It's actually making cached memory. So that's why it takes a long time to load the first time. And some people will be like, oh, I hate how slow it is. And so the first time you load that part, it'll take a while. But that's because it's making a copy literally of all the data. And then you can always just go over here and update, and it'll pull in whatever changes has kind of been made since the last time you were in it. The reason that's important, the reason that's good, some people are like, well, that's not good. Like, it's faster. It's a lot faster for me to present on this and to show teams things, data in real time than trying to use the JIRA reports, which are great, but they're kind of slow and clunky if I'm actually trying to go fast back and forth. So what was the team again? I'm sorry.
Forge Project Sprint.
Forge, boom. So you select your sprint or you select your board, and then you would set the dates to begin with. I would set wherever they kind of formed, wherever the team, if you have a lot of team members shifting, where did it finally get kind of stable? I would encourage you just kind of make that line stand. As a Scrum Master, I kind of do, well, I started with all these teams in the fall. That's another way to do it. So I just put the fall date, that I kind of started with most of them, that PI. So that's more than enough data to do predictability on, and it's the closest thing to the original team. So then we load the board. It's gonna, again, this is gonna be the slowest it'll ever be. It's gonna bring up all these custom fields. Just don't worry about select all, just do continue. It'll take them all. Don't worry about extra clicks. And so I'm gonna do another COP on Actionable Agile and lessons I've learned from the team in about 3 weeks. So I'll show these other reports, but we're gonna focus today on Monte Carlo, how many. And the first thing you wanna do is go through your item filter and decide from this team what you're going to plan on. Really just think input in, input out. Meaning what I wanna predict on, I want the input of that in. If I'm not going to plan bugs, let's say, RFAs, if you have those as issue types, which I really encourage you to do if you're a Scrum Master, is to get that on your board, because those by definition are side work. to select the things you're going to plan on. So almost always stories, because that should be software you're delivering. Tasks, probably. Subtasks, hardly ever, because they're not really any kind of quote unquote deliverable. They're rolling up to a deliverable. And epics, that's more of a program level, right? I'm going to throw bugs on here. Is that cool, Linda? I think she's cool with it. And so then basically all yours, this is your previous behavior, right? This is how many issues or their throughput, how many items get closed and when they got closed. Again, this is not pulling from current data. This is only history. So if they got stuff in progress, it ain't going to take that into consideration. So we'll go, so let's say we're just going to take all of the dates, and then we're going to set our sprint dates from today to 14 days later. Oh, sorry. So here's the trick. Here's another trick. It'll always do a month, and I hate that, but it always does a month. So set your start date and then go backwards. like always go backwards. I always like to do 1,000,000 simulations just because I can say like Dr. Evil and makes me feel better. 1,000,000. It gives the bell curve a little bit, usually evens it out. So then we can say, hey, as a team, what do you guys feel comfortable with? You get 95.3% of the times you get at least one item done. 80 or 69% you get 3, 50% 4. So based on your throughput, again, I made you a super high throughput from mine, and this is, let's focus really, but what I would say is based on your throughput, based on your previous forecast, and based on the Monte Carlo, what do you guys want to start at? So online matter most to me, what you guys think you want to start at. What I'm going to do is go 3, 2, 1, and we're going to shoot that number. Everybody else get a sticky note and say, based on what we know from our previous behavior, what do we feel comfortable taking on this sprint? Before we even look at the story, we want to set kind of initial scope. So 3, write it down. 3, 2, 1, shoot. So I got 2, 2, 1, 4, 3, 3, 3. I can do fingers. If it's, sometimes it's 20. That's the reason I have them write it down on a sticky note. Online, I think somebody pinged me. I didn't see it pop up though. Nope, somebody else probably. So 3, who is 1? Somebody was 1 over here. Tell me why I won.
Because there's a 95% chance we'll do 1.
You just want to be super committed
Yeah,
to
but
that.
there's nothing between, there's not even 80% between 1 and 2, and 70 I think is too low.
So the other thing, like, so when you're looking at this, another quick tip is if you hover over, it tells you what percentage of the trial hit, like exactly, right? So this is, although 3 is, right, it looks like it's not close to 70, it's really close to 70. It's actually 69.7 because it's actually taking the front end of this, right? So that's another quick tip is to actually hover over the thing because you can see an exact number of the simulations that hit in that issue. If it ran the simulations said 3 times. Does that make sense? Of the 1,000,000.
So 2 is close to 80, but
yeah,
still won't.
2 is, so 2 here at the beginning of 2, right, is actually 84. Does that help you any? So 2 is really 84%. So 70 would be 3. I'm not trying to talk you down, but I'm just trying to be honest with the data.
Okay.
2, anybody? So who was somebody 4?
I was.
Yeah, why are you 4? Because you're a PO.
I just like when the team bets on themselves.
Yeah. So the PO will almost always push you, and that's, as a Scrum Master, guys, I think that's kind of the role that we have. How do we help them be honest and like live in that, push yourself a little bit, right? Don't be so safe that you're basically sandbagging it or whatever those terms are. You know, how can you keep them on an honest, predictable rate that's true to the team? So like I try to push them around 66 to 70 as a general rule of thumb. Like that tends to be a good rule of thumb. Config services have bet on themselves at 50%, darn close, a bunch of times. Honestly, nobody ever really gets done exactly what they're committed. You can see all this, always a story that escapes and stuff like that. So again, it's just a gut check. So are we good with 3?
2.
Any,
Don't forget, I'm not going to be here.
all right. 2. Well, that's another thing. I should have took 1 day off.
Ooh.
So,
Hey, Kevin.
yeah.
I have a question about how you loaded this chart. Is it best practice to only load like the past 2 months?
I think it's best practice. My just gut is best practice is when you have solid data of when the team formed and started performing. Sometimes like sometimes if there's like a holiday break that's just so glaringly inaccurate of the behavior of the team, because we shut down at Christmas, like it's ridiculous. You know, that I would start wherever it's solid data.
Doesn't the what's it called? The simulations take all of those things into account though, like the fact that, you know, around Christmas and around Thanksgiving things get lower, and that's just part of the analysis that's done.
Yeah, so that's fair at one point, right? You can leave it in or not. It's really communicate with the team and let them know what they're betting on, right? Because this is really about themselves. It's not about us coming up with some perfect method to predict the future, because that doesn't. Yeah. So what we want to do, like config services, is okay. You guys have any problem with me showing? I generally don't like to show like. So with them, I got the right stuff. Let me make sure I'm right. So you'll see gaps like this, and you're right. Like it's not going to matter too much on a team that you have a lot of data on, but like that team that you have there, I would say wherever it started to be a official team. You know what I mean? Like wherever did it stabilize the team? If you go kind of start, you know, storming, forming, norming, and all that stuff, where did it start?
Got it. Okay.
Or that's typically my rule of thumb. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
If you don't mind me chiming in, one thing is just check with your team too, because like Kevin said, this isn't meant to be some perfect, you know, metric that as a Scrum Master you're giving to your team, saying here's what you can do. It's an example beyond the system team is we generally only Monte Carlo the previous sprint. We don't check the whole year, the months, or whatever. We just say, okay, what did we do in the previous sprint? All right, let's see if we can do that again. Because there were a couple sprints, and the reason we did that is there were a couple sprints where we didn't get, we got maybe one story done for a few sprints because of whatever happened with our work. And that does show to a degree in the Monte Carlo. So as a team, we were like, it was lower than we wanted because we knew we could do more work. We were comfortable that we could do more work. So we're like, all right, well, change it to the last 2 sprints or something. And then it kind of adjusted to where we thought we were more comfortable doing the work and agreed more with the metric.
It's a betting, end of the day, it's a betting sheet.
Yeah.
Like just straight up. And
we just wanted to bet higher on ourselves, I guess.
Right. I mean, that's the truth. And so, Linda, something good to do, and everybody, a quick tip is to save it. So that's why I save it and send the fork. So we actually say, what swath did we pull from? Because you're going to forget. You're going to forget, Linda, where you decided to make that line from time to time. Save that as a PNG and load it in the next PowerPoint. Did I do something?
You can say, I didn't know you could save it.
Yes.
How did you do that? Probably the down arrow?
This down arrow right here.
Cool.
You download as PNG, and it'll just basically create it as a PNG file.
That's awesome.
Screenshot. So you can drop that in. So that's what I do. I drop that in real quick. It doesn't take me but a second. For the next time, how predictable were we, right?
Thanks, Kevin. That's a cool tip.
Yep. The other thing, and again, this is just, and I'll tell this in front of team members because I trust all these guys. I changed this to bar. And the only reason is because it's typically lines, and then people get completely distracted about what's the top versus the bottom. I don't understand this. As soon as you change it to bars, nobody asks you any questions. That's why. That's the only reason I do that. Obviously, the top is just whatever you select. So if you don't select anything, it's taking all the data. So, and that's what's actually running the data throughput. So that's the tips on Monte Carlo real quick, just basically how I do it real quick. So let's get moving back to the rest of the exercise.
I'll do with 3, Kevin.
All right. we'll see. We'll probably only get to 2 anyhow, but we'll do 3. So now this is where I would pass it over to a PO, and they would share like, hey, here's our PI objectives, right? I'd say, hey, here's our PI objectives. Let's talk about them real quick. How are we doing with them? Just a quick test. Sometimes I'll throw up a feature burn down if that's the main thing that we're trying to deliver on. The PO's made that very distinct. That's what this next one's about. Gives us a real idea of where it's at. And then we start kind of writing down the stories. So here's kind of like what one might start to look like. I'm putting this online so they can see kind of what the board might look like. You can see with this one, I started actually drawing kittens. So I actually put that visual risk up. That's exploding. I want them to see that so they know what kind of risk they're taking on. We identified diffusers and we write them off to the right. I started to do. Here you'll see like diffusers. We need to schedule a meeting. This was an exploding fat cat that we had right there on the left. So it's like, man, we need to figure that out. Like, let's take that off. You can see that we removed in this one, we negotiated with the PO and took off, I think, 3 stories to make this feasible. You know, again, the risk was in front of us. We knew what we were taking on. And here's another one. You can see kind of what happened here. Like, wow, they went up to 20 issues at 28%. That's super low, right? Super low. But a lot of it was because at the end, we found out these were really small tasks that they felt like they were comfortable taking on. So they felt like we haven't had any of these small tasks in a really long time. That wouldn't be in our behavior, so let's take those in. A lot of smoke tests and different things and CX suite stuff going on right now. So anyhow, bottom line is you can kind of see how they did. I also started writing the escaped work and what progress it was, because they really cared about that. The team started to say like, well, that's almost done. That's almost done. That's almost done. And so you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the stories are like kind of in progress or in review. Like they're almost going to finish across the line. So those were in a place where they felt comfortable with taking this on. This is actually this sprint. You guys care me if I call you out?
Yeah.
So they're actually right on pace to do this. And I always tell them they're crazy, but they do it well.
I like betting on them.
Yeah. So real quick, Tyler, will you share your screen?
Yeah.
Let's see if I can unplug. Actually, I think you could just take it over. Perfect. So Tyler's our PO. He's going to bring up 3 stories. We're going to rank these and we're going to get out of here, all right? Because this is basically, or if you need to jump off, please jump off. But I wanted to just do this for at least 1 story. So he'd open this. Tyler, go ahead and take over and read this story, and then we're going to rank. We're going to discuss it.
Yep, so this task is just renaming the change management tab in configuration from change management to change control. We had a name change. So typically I'll have my tech leads either talk about the scope or the size complexity of it, and then we, what do you call it, cat it or rank it?
Rank it, I usually call it.
Are there any questions about this before we begin this one?
So, yeah, I know nothing about this. So, what level or like what steps do you need to take to complete this task?
So this pretty much would be an LRM change, just due to the fact that we have a string available in config. This is in the drop-down utils menu. Instead of change management, we wanted to say change control.
Cool.
So,
all right, you ready to rank it? 3, 2, 1, shoot. So we got exploding kitten, exploding kitten. What's your thoughts?
The LRM has been broken for, I don't know, the past week. I don't actually know if it's been fixed yet.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Definitely
so,
a risk. Yeah.
So it kind of sort of depends on how fast they can get that back up. I think Matt O'Connell's taking the lead on getting that fixed, so we might want to put him down as a subject matter expert or somebody to talk to.
Perfect. And so that's an idea. That literally was real time. We didn't plan that. He had no idea. He just knows information that we didn't. So we got out of his head real quick. Want to do another one? Just do the next one real quick.
Yep. So workflow rules, they're missing a attribute after import. So pretty much at this point, I'd turn it over to my tech leads. But when you import a rule, there's a column that references an attribute. That isn't getting updated. So in the import-export world, just making sure that that column is properly tagged or is properly getting updated on some of our post-export hooks is all that would be required here. So
This is something that we've done in the past.
it is, yeah, this is actually kind of a common thing for us to miss.
All right, ready to rank it? 3, 2, 1, shoot. All kittens. So you get the gist, right? Like, you kind of get the gist. If a fat cat comes out, we talk about why, right? And we try to break it down. You ask questions about what's the smallest testable piece of this, because that's an easy way to break it down. If you can test it, it means it can go all the way through your code and can be testable. It can create its own story based off that test. There's all kinds of little tricks. I'll send those out as like questions follow up. I have like a little guide that I have that I'll send you. And I also have the cheat sheets for the Agile coaches created for Actionable Agile, which kind of walks you through how to load the board and what I did there with the Monte Carlo. So before we leave, confidence vote on our plan. Let's say there's another one up here and it's a kitten, we'll say. So we have one exploding kitten up here. We have a diffuser. We know that Chelsea's out on sabbatical, Tech Lead's out there today, and we took that one day off our scope per se. I'm not sure if I did it or not. So confidence vote, 3, 2, 1, fist of 5. So yeah, 3. Why you with 3?
Just because the amount that it seems like we have out, like both the tech leads, well, or all the tech leads on the team are going to be out, and typically they can be good resources for other developers. And we do have one exploding kitten out of the 3, so that could be a hang up. So
everybody cool with 3.5? So I was kind of in the middle of comments, so it's just 3. It's just a gut check. Right here, if it was really bad, we'd say, do you want to change the scope? Do you want to leave stuff out? Another quick tip is I often do 2 or 3 more stories than what they plan on scope-wise, so they know what they can pull in. So the team's clear on what's coming up next and what they can grab. It's ready to go. We already had discussions about it. We already identified risk. All that's ready to go. So that's it. I don't want to go over very much. I know we started a little bit late. But if you have more questions about it, please send me an email. I'd love to follow up more on how, you're using this or how I can help you to use this. But real quick, I wanted to go over the benefits that I found, and this is directly from team members. Come on. Which are, oh, there it was. I got notes. I think the benefits of risk-based planning is less time argue about store points, better engage discussions about work, actual plan of attack when issues arise. I encourage those diffusers to go into JIRA cards as notes, comments, increase in predictability based on actual metrics, not just estimated thoughts, and visualization of risk. There's an inability to fudge points to attempt to take on more work. Config services, when I first started working them, had this, well, they don't have work, so I can make that a 3, or I can make that let's make those 3s all 1s. I could probably get it done like that, which is the whole point. It completely throws out the whole point of having story points, like in my mind. It's better to say, no, we're just going to take that risk on. We want them to have work. We're going to take that risk on. We're going to do what we can to get them what they need to complete those stories. So to be honest about predictability. To be predictable, you have to be honest. So that's kind of the whole goal with all of this. Cool. Thanks, everybody. I'll send you guys a follow-up email. Give me feedback on how we can improve this, how we can improve the COP. Anything like that is much appreciated. And give them a round of applause for coming in and taking time to share their knowledge. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Kevin.